3. Hey everybody, Off-Road Hall of Fame here. This is Larry Ragland's Class 1 car from 1983 to 1986. It has been donated by Ed Maren to the Off-Road Hall of Fame, and it has been delivered to the Lincoln, Nebraska Museum. So let me introduce you to Ed, who donated the car. Ed, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then a lot about the car.
Ed Maren's my name. I'm actually a retread in the off-road racing industry. What I do for a living is I manufacture cooking equipment, mainly barbecue stuff. And then I also made a living as a firefighter for Kansas City, Missouri. I raced from 77 to 83. Back in the day, the big deal for us was the Mint 400, which in 1981 finished 10th out of like 83 starters that day. And we had one pit from Kansas City. So what happens to a guy when his business or when his hobby becomes his business is what happened to me in the barbecue industry. You go back to an old hobby. So I went back to off-road racing in 2009 in 1600 cars, and the bug bit real hard, and I got to taking a look at when Nora started in this vintage world, and I found this car needing to be restored. So it actually ended up in Olathe, Kansas, is where the car ended up. And a lot of people had heard about it, which I found out, but I was the guy that didn't know what that word Porsche meant. And of course I wanted to put the car back together how Larry raced it exactly. So it was quite a project.
So after you got the car, you restored it, then what did you do?
I bought the car in 2011. I let it set a couple years before I started in on it. And so about a year to get the rolling car done, but it actually took me a year to do the motor project. And finding the right parts and pieces was very difficult. And I had a lot of people help me try to make the story short. Larry raced the car originally with a 3.3 in it. And so I got a 3.2 engine, was working on putting it together, but had a bad crankshaft, trying to find crankshafts. So I ended up buying stuff for a 3.6 and matched 3.6 stuff with the 3.2 case. It actually ended up being a 3.5, so it's 98 millimeter with a 3.6 crank in it, makes it to a 3.5, but it actually runs the 46 IDA Webers, exactly the carburetors that Larry, not the ones, but the same style of carburetor this thing ran back in the day. So it's extremely as close to how Larry raced it as we possibly could have made it.
And you started racing this car in what year?
2015 was the first race with it, and it was at the Nora 1000. And actually Larry raced it with me.
And how'd you guys do?
Struggled, but we finished.
Yeah, and you won the Madonna Award.
Yes,
that year.
yeah, we got the Bilstein Madonna Award, got it to Cabo. Of course, everybody who races Baja will tell you there's a story every mile, and we got the stories, but it was, it learned a ton. I wish I'd have gone to Nora a year with somebody and learned a lot more about the organization and how the race ran. I think we wouldn't have ran into near the problems that we had, but we went down there green as can be, and Larry jumped in with us, which was amazing, and never met him except talked to him on the telephone. What a sweet guy Larry Ragland is, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so raced it a couple more times, had some success.
Yes, we went back the next year in 16 and won the Challenger era. We won the class, then won the era in 16, and then went back. Well, then the next race for it was the 17 Mint 400.
The 50th annual, right? I think it was the 50th.
That was the Nora 50th, was his 16. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, the Mint 400.
Yeah, the Mint 400 was 2017. It was the 50th.
Yeah, 2000. It was the 50th. That's right on that. big vintage car field there. Of course, we ran 2 laps, there, and we actually were 4th quick of all the 2-lap cars that ran. There were 78 2-lap cars that morning, and we were 4th quick. And then we won the vintage era that we were in, but also the vintage overall.
Right.
And so then we went and ran Nora, the 17.
A month later,
we went back down and we repeated winning the Challenger era again in 17 with the car. And that was the last time it was raced.
Yeah. And since then, you prepped the car.
Yes.
Got it all ready.
Yes.
And
it's pretty well prepped. It could be raced right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Which it should be, right?
Yes.
So, Ed, why don't we go over the car? Why don't you just kind of point some stuff out to us? Introduce people to a Class 1 Unlimited from we'll call it 1986, because that was the last year Larry raced it. Last year Larry raced it, and it has some upgrades to when he raced it in 86, minus the coilover. So,
Yeah.
why don't you show us what we got here?
Okay, so you have a 10-inch over with standard beam car, we would call it, except the one change I made on it, it did have the torsion leafs in it, but we went to the coilovers. This is the style of coilover they did run in that era back in the day. So these are non-bypass shocks. And then we've got a standard rack and pinion steering that is got a hydraulic power steering rack to it.
And what kind of hubs are you running on there?
This got the JMAR hubs on
the
it,
fronts? Okay.
And these are 4-inch over arms.
Okay.
So then you've got originally the car had a big tack in the center of it, but of course in Nora we have to navigate ourselves, and so we put the Lowrance GPS in the center. So that's how we raced it. Is you're constantly looking up and down and watching the GPS.
Right. Yeah.
So the car originally had a DG 300 5-speed in it. So of course those are non-repairable pretty much. What I ended up doing was going to a Mendiola 5-speed. So that's the transmission it's got in it. I believe this is the original fuel cell case in the car. And of course it had Parker pumper. I don't think the car originally had a Parker pumper in it. Later in the years, I think that got put in there, but I don't believe Larry raced it with one.
And that's your hose right here. This goes into your helmet.
Yes.
And that's a fresh air system for all
Yes.
you guys that don't know much about it. And then the rear suspension.
It is torsion rear, but it is a offset torsion. It's not a standard torsion like what you would see on a lot of cars, but it is an offset torsion. That's got like a 31-inch long torsion bar in it.
Okay.
So-
And what kind of hubs are you running here?
These are Summer Brothers hubs. So you got these huge bearings on, if anybody's ever worked with Summer Brothers hubs. And of course then the 3.5 Porsche with the 46 IDA Webers, K&N air cleaners. We did go twin plug with it. It never ran with twin plugs, but ideally running on pump gas and trying to run a 10-to-1 motor, it burnt fuel better going to the twin plug system. That is a Cox exhaust 6-into-1 style header, and it's amazing sound that this thing puts out.
How much horsepower do you think this thing has? What's like approximate horsepower?
Just a hair, right around 400 at the crank.
Okay.
So, but that's crank horsepower compared to
To the wheels.
To the wheels.
Gotcha.
But it's the torque on a flat 6 is incredible. It's amazing how torquey these engines are.
All right, so moving around.
Of course, it's air-cooled engine, but it's really also oil-cooled. So you have these huge oil coolers on it, and you really watch the oil temperature is what you watch. They are dry-sumped engines, so we try not to go over 250 degrees on the oil temp. Diablo down in Mexico can get really funky, and so what you do is watch the oil temp gauge and then back it down and try not to get over 250 on that.
And your tires here.
These are the Mickey Thompson Baja belted tires that it was the original tires that this car ran on. This was a Mickey Thompson sponsored car for Larry.
All right.
So these aren't just wings, okay? What's so important about these were it kept the rocks from coming off your front tires and beating up your shocks.
Gotcha.
So that was real important. You didn't see a lot of cars that had these, but Larry said that was a big deal having that wing on the Nerf bars.
And the only other thing is you got your bumper jack right there, so easy to take all that stuff off. And
yeah, at one point you just picked it up right here, is where you picked up and it lifted the whole car on the side.
Yeah.
Right
and
there.
that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since you have owned it, you have 2 Nora 1000 wins.
In the Challenger era.
And a Mint 400 win.
Yes.
And then you have a Nora 500 second place?
Yeah, we ran second in like 19, I think, or 18. Is 18 maybe, or 20? I can't, well,
yeah.
I think the sticker's on here. I don't, if it doesn't state the year, though.
Yeah, it might not. It might have been 19 or 20.
Yeah.
So, and then you decided to donate it to the Off-Road Hall of Fame.
Yes.
The Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame, excuse me.
It was a terrible shame to try to part it out and taking a piece of history that was so successful. The last race Larry ran the car was the 86 Mint 400 and actually won the overall that day. So he was supposed to run his truck from GM, but they didn't have the truck done, and he asked them if they could get his buggy back out. He still owned it at that time, and he won the overall with it. So it's rather cool that his last ride in this car was a winner.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, guys. This beautiful Class 1 car donated by Ed and Kathy Maren. And it will be on display here at the American Speed Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And that's my barbecue company's Fast Eddie's by Cook Shack. That's what funds this.
And what Eddie didn't say is, modestly, is he just got entered into the Barbecue Hall of Fame this year. He's getting inducted in November.
In November, yes.
And so
it's actually the day before the Ormoff.
There you go.
Induction.
So Off-Road Hall of Fame car, Barbecue Hall of Fame guy, and with a Off-Road Hall of Fame driver, Larry Ragland. So got a bunch of Hall of Famers right there.
Yeah.
All right, guys, make sure you make it out to this museum. It is absolutely gorgeous. You guys have to come see this place. This is just a tidbit of what they have, and it is amazing. Sorry for the long video, but you guys will enjoy it.